I'll kind of recap from our meeting last week. And I think we just want to think about what we could use for a brainstorm session. One idea is, do we want to have, so we'll have 2 hours. Do we want to have a couple of small groups brainstorming ideas, such as what ways can you think of that, I don't know, what makes sense, that adults, volunteers could be spreading the word about trusted adults, or, we can have some sort of small table activity so that, and then the Zoom people could be a group, so that partly just as a way for people to build community amongst ourselves, and then also to do some idea generating, and then somebody from each little group could come back to the big group. I'm not sure what topics we would want to do for that, but that was one idea. And would also, I'm just trying to think of resources that we would be asking Sally and Lynn for, like those white pads of paper. Hi, Judy.
Hello, how are you?
Good to see you.
I'm sort of walking around because I'm trying to make copies of something to take to no, student services. I have to go to student services before our meeting will be over. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Oh, no problem. So yeah, hopefully we're gonna just use about half an hour, but I can definitely take my phone on the road if we have to keep talking. Sally, we have for half an hour, but Sally started recording just in case you wanted to catch up. But anyway, yeah, I was just trying to think, what step by step would we like to see for a mini retreat, and what questions would we like to ask the group? And Judy, I was just saying, I kind of like the idea of breakouts. We can have the Zoom people in one breakout and a couple of tables in the room, depending on how our attendance is, and then ask questions of breakout groups, and then come back as a group and talk about them. So, I don't want to necessarily be the driver. I know Lynn was going to talk. Lynn initially had talked about getting a facilitator, but I haven't heard anything about that since. And then also, I think maybe Sally, about that, our speaker for 8 minutes or so, whether.
Ashley, yes, she should be available. And I was just actually thinking, she does this enough and has been out to some other groups, so she might have like maybe she could give us a little assignment of like breakout rooms, and like maybe let me bounce that back with her and see if she has like a standard thing that she does after she gives the info. And I was maybe gonna, Michael's done her the training too, Michael Swisher, so maybe I'll see if he's available, since he's familiar with everybody here. So that might be something that would take up. Yeah, so she would give her a short presentation, and then maybe she'd have like an assignment or like some sort of guided imagery of how we could move forward and be helpful.
I'm writing down questions. I'm sorry. I every time you hit the enter key, instead of going to the next line, it posts it. So I'm thinking of questions. I like the idea of breakout groups. I like the idea of giving people questions they can sink their teeth into and get to know each other. I think that we need to, with Megan's idea of connecting with everything, I think is very important, and that we could ask questions even to people to introduce themselves, not reporting out, but just introducing themselves, really what's on your mind, because I think we'll find that we might get some themes that come out of that. So one of the questions here is, what can we do in the partnership to break down the silos that have resulted from the COVID pandemic?
How would you describe that, Rick? What silos?
That people in their isolation from COVID are not only working from home and focusing very much on just delivering whatever their service is, with fewer people, fewer resources, ambiguous situation. People just could have tightened in and done what they needed to do, And there's just no time, even in a meeting like this, where you don't have an opportunity to chit chat with people after the meeting, you got your keys in your hand, you're standing by your car, but you're still engaged in the conversation. That in a sense, everyone has become their own silo, and also just organizations have just had to look into themselves to keep going during this time of COVID. And we need to turn outward again. That's what I mean. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
I mean, not us, of course, because we've been meeting.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the breakout groups thing. Just remind us that we're gonna, by the time people come in and they get settled, that takes some time. And breakout groups, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but I mean, and they can be really helpful, but it takes time.
Yeah.
So we just have to figure out a way to do that in an efficient sort of way. And do we know yet where we're gonna be?
In that room on the first floor in Sequoia 3, right?
Oh gosh, I do. I'm sorry, my brain is just malfunctioning. So actually, I think that room is a little small if we're gonna have the quorum that we need. So it's actually a room at Sequoia 2 on the 3rd floor in Syfax. And I will be sending that. I'm gonna 100% confirm it because of my experience last week of it being accepted and then not actually being available. So I wanted to check that and I have been not able to get into the building this week, but I'm verifying that it should be Sequoia 2 323. But I want to 100% nail that down, and then I'm going to send that out hopefully Thursday. Tomorrow.
Can you also
Right.
send the
And
street
what-
address? Because I don't know
Yeah.
which one's Sequoia 2. Yeah,
I agree.
Yes,
I don't
of
either.
course.
thank
Yeah,
you.
definitely. Okay.
Thanks, Sally. All right, I hear you, Judy, on the breakouts. Also, I wonder, nice if we had a longer than 2-hour meeting, sometimes it's nice just to spend the first 15 minutes gathering, and maybe that'll happen anyway. But
Right.
it's possible we can also kind of turn a warm-up conversation into that time to let people gather. And so we could come up with some of those kind of icebreaker questions and just kick that off pretty soon after the meeting's supposed to start. And then people can fold in as they arrive, and then we can shift gears. But Rick, I like the idea. I was jumping right into kind of let's do our trusted adult stuff. But I think also thinking about, how to kind of honestly like regrow the partnership and kind of do some post-COVID build up again.
Megan, the other day, I was looking at, let's see, I have it in here. The Arlington Partnership. This sounds really boring, okay? But it's something that it's the basics of the partnership. The Arlington Partnerships charter. But if there's a way we could get copies maybe of old, I don't know if that's in every one of the, the booklets that were made up with the data, for the data. I just think that if our purpose, one of our goals here is to sort of help people understand where we've been and why we did it, first of all, what are we supposed to be doing? Because sometimes that's really hard to understand.
Yes.
This is not, this wouldn't be that bad to read. And I don't know that it would work to just hand it out at the tape, I guess maybe what we could do is hand them out at the tables. Everybody, this may work for a small group thing. Hand it out at the tables. Everybody reads it. And then we make sure that at each table, they've got somebody who has been part of the partnership for a while and who could, we'd take 5 minutes and they could ask questions and things they don't understand or they want to know a little bit more about. We could do that. That's just an idea. I just don't want, since this was supposed to be a where have we been and where are we going? I don't want to miss out on the where have we been and people feel like, I don't know what they're talking about kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's just a
So
thought.
it sounds like what I'm imagining is having a gathering activity where we're sort of stimulating questions and conversations, having a presentation of some kind about the history of the partnership, making it clear. We want people to meet each other, understand what we're doing here, just revise the first time we're all back. And then we can tell them what the agenda is. I'm just thinking out loud here. See if it's okay to proceed, and then go into either the small groups or the discussion about, things that we already know that we want to be talking about.
Yeah. This is why Sally, did anybody ever find that banner, that big white sheet of paper, gigantic one that has all the.
So Judy, we do have, because I'm trying to think of what we can do online, because we will have the online people
Yeah.
who can't join, but we
Yes.
do. John had a longer list, and Sally had a 1 to 2 pager. So I think
Right.
we could send one of those things around. But yeah, this group should probably put together a final list of what those things are going to be that we want to send around in advance for people to look at. And the charter could maybe be one of those things too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, I was only asking about this because as people come in, this thing, as it was done, is real colorful, and it catches you. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It's got a lot of stuff. People they walk up and down and look at it. We could still, that wouldn't be in place of. That's just to sort of, it's like a warm up or a welcoming, sort of a. Because people would be standing up, otherwise they come in and they sit down at the tables and then they never move and that kind of
The
stuff.
advantage is that you walk along it, you're talking, it's the chit chat Rick was just talking about. Somebody's standing next to you and they'll say, I didn't know about this. Do you know what it was? Oh, that's really good. I'd forgotten this. And it's a visual, brings out the attention of others. If it's just
Totally
written on a piece
sold.
of paper, it's really easy to skim through it and say,
Yes.
oh yeah, they did a lot of good stuff. Bang.
Yeah, and I can bring, we could bring some of our, we might have enough of them, the reports that have been put together, because they all have had really colorful front pages and.
Oh, that sounds good.
The inside. And just have them sitting around.
I'm
in
just
case someone
mindful,
wants-
right? We have 1 week and I'm not sure. So we'll just placeholder, like if Sally can find the banner, great. And if not,
Yeah,
let's
a bunch of
keep
Kim's
moving.
stuff
Yeah.
got tossed
We have to call Kim.
recently.
She must know.
If you do
But I
it-
think bringing a report sounds good. Sorry,
But
Pam.
reports
no,
I have.
if you do a gallery walk kind of idea with those sheets, then when you bring the group back together, you might want to just call out the accomplishments, the things you're really proud of that have been done. And that would be a way to sort of pull the attention into the accomplishments, and then, that gives people a sense of sort of what you value and how you want to sort of see yourself going forward.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And people who maybe they don't understand what is the blah, blah, that's on that sheet or on our handout, that gives them a chance to ask and someone else to answer. That's a good idea, Pam.
Great.
Be kind of welcoming.
Mhm. That's a great idea. Okay. And then, after we've gathered back together and sort of, so I guess I'm hearing like kind of a bit of a history section, and that could be a while. I don't want to take too much time.
No.
But it'd be hard to cut it shorter than like half an hour, because things just take time, or welcome and squeeze some history in to make it kind of a quick session. And then we're going to have like an 8 to 10 minute presentation by Ashley and some breakouts. And then, I want to have plenty of time at the end to gather back together again and sort of think about what kind of action we might want to agree to as a group, at least preliminarily, in terms of like a next steps, trusted adult. And Rick, I have been trying to keep up with the chat. I would love those questions to be worked in the diversity and equity questions as we're thinking in small groups, but also big group, and just be mindful before we come up with solutions that we think are great. How are we accounting for our community, and being mindful that we want to have
And
be
I
community
can't
driven.
copy your question. Of course, I have the equity.
Yeah, Rick, if you want to cut and paste
framework,
those
but
into
if you have them, if you
an
take them
email,
somewhere else,
Yeah, I'm taking
I'm
my
trying to
notes, so I
transpose them,
will.
that'd be awesome.
but I'm on Tamiflu and not
Sorry.
really functioning.
Thanks for joining, Sally. I'm sorry Lynn couldn't just take one for the team.
I would like to, let's see, make a few other suggestions. Since we only are a week away, I think we need to invest in, probably in Megan. I can help, of course, too. Just the decision-making ability to decide how to run the group after tonight's conversation, so that she can confidently start pulling things together and run things, and we're all gonna support whatever she does, because we know that she's doing it based on what we've already thought about. I'm the first person to endlessly tinker with things, but in this kind of situation, it's a good idea for,
Yeah,
her
and
to
again,
lead and for us
I
to
was hoping for a
support.
facilitator for this meeting, and it doesn't look like we're getting one. So, but I will certainly take volunteers for different segments. I mean, I don't see myself as necessarily the driver. Like ideally, there would have been a subcommittee to sort of put a mini retreat together. And but yeah, Rick, I want to make it by the end of our chat tonight to be concrete about how it's going to go. Just
I mean, could
decide.
anybody in the partnership be the facilitator, especially among the staff? I mean, I'd be willing to do it. I don't know if I'm a very good facilitator, but it would be good to have a.
I mean, we thought
facilitator,
it'd be
even if they're
great to have an
non-professional.
external, facilitator, but it's probably too late for that. So, I mean, I'm happy to lead a meeting. I just was going to say, if there's pieces of the meeting, like the history piece, if, John or Judy wanted to take that piece of the agenda, and then, that type of way of just mixing up the voices, so it's not always the same person.
Mhm.
Yeah, facilitator is valuable if you're trying to solve a problem and you know what it is. And we're still looking for what's the problem we're solving. So I'm not convinced a facilitator could do as much as they might otherwise.
Okay.
If we
And I
know
think
we're going
the
to work
caution
on
against the
trusted
idea of saying-
adults, then a facilitator works. But if we
Mhm.
think we're saying, what are the issues you see? And again, it's not, I don't know quite who we're talking to. DHS shows up, a few community people, public health, maybe library. And so are we asking the staff to do something? Or are we pitching to the community members to do something? And it could be either, both can be
Both,
true.
I think, both, I think.
Yeah, working.
I think we're asking the
cooperatively.
community members what their actions are going to be over the next year, and staff to the extent, designated staff, not DHS staff. That's the way I see it. I see, I see a lot of advisors on the among the community members, and I think we need a new an infusion of some action ideas that people can
Mhm.
engage in.
Yeah, I
Action
think
based on the values and purpose of the partnership, not just some person coming in and running the show.
Yeah, and I guess that sort of takes it back. I love the trusted adult idea, but that's an idea I love. I'm not going to be the chair next year, so what do other people want to worry about? I mean, the nice thing about that is I thought it's a great example because it comes out of the data that we have so far, and so it's something we can sort of build some momentum around.
Well,
But
and
is it okay to ask a leading question and just say, hey, what does everybody think about this idea we're exploring
course.
this evening?
yes,
Of course, I think you're going to have to, because very few of them will have read anything or thought about it until they show up at the meeting. So this is very much a guided open discussion rather than a blank slate to open discussion. So, and, the one I other than the trusted adult that comes out clearly, in general, it is the relatively low scores across the board on whether it's your Your Voice Matters or the SEL study, that the kids are really not doing well, and saying on the SEL study, well, they're not so far from the national average. And we know that the national average is low because of COVID the last 3-4 years. I mean, just kids are not doing well. And every counselor will tell you that. The disparity between what parents understand about their kids and what kids report just strikes me as almost guaranteed to be a dysfunctional family. If the parents think the kids are doing fine, and the kids are 70% of the kids, 80% are saying we're under really high stress, that's not how you have good family discussions. No, you really do. What's your stress about? Can we help with your stress? Is any of it from home or just school? If it's school, can we balance it? Ginger and I are going to have a conversation just like that tonight with a kid at Mason. He's under serious stress. He wants to talk. So we're going to have to walk through and see, is anything fixable? Is it all external? Is it some attitude internal? Is there something the schools could do for the kids? Is it, just, there's a lot of things around that kind of an issue, but that disparity bothers me more than the absolute values. I mean, the very people the kids depend on don't understand who their kids are.
So John, I can see a couple of things. One is, the question, what should the partnership's role be? I mean, you're talking to a youth who trusts you. Does it become part of what a trusted adult model could be? Or is it something that the partnership would like to explore with our, teen network board or other youth? What other interventions or assistance or actions could be helpful? I mean, are we talking about two separate things, I guess, is one of my questions. Or is that also something that a trusted adult conversation could explore?
Well, you're only a trusted adult if you've known the kid for a while and they've learned to trust you. So you can't walk up and become one. It's not like being a policeman. I passed, I put on my badge, now I'm a policeman. It doesn't work that way. So I don't encourage anybody to go out and look to find a kid to be a trusted adult for, rather to look at the young people in their lives and offer to talk, offer to have a cup of coffee together, offer whatever you want to do.
So you're talking about parent education, or I'm just trying to figure out what the action is that goes with the problem and how the partnership can help.
Parents clearly need education if their kids think the kids are stressed and the parents don't know it. So you've got to tell the parents somehow, this isn't just the other person's kids. It's likely to be, once it's 75% of the kids, it's very likely to be one of yours. So talk to them. I don't know. Talk to the schools, find out what's going on.
You think of a concrete action we could do for this particular thing is even just to host one of our community conversations.
Yeah.
Where we present the data, we pull people in, we get a large group in the library if we can, and talk about a situation that's perceived as an emergency, or if it isn't perceived as an emergency to create a lot of hype about it to get people interested. I mean, we're not stirring things up, we're just highlighting what we're seeing, what everybody knows, let's talk about it, kind of thing.
I think.
But I don't think we have to talk about that at, like tonight. And I don't think we should go in with a bunch of sort of things, thinking we've got ideas and this would be a good thing for all of us to do. I mean, I think we need to do a lot of listening and encouraging people to talk about what they've noticed with their own family or their kids in the neighborhood, or with data that they've seen, or whatever it is. Get input, because there's a lot, we haven't done that for a while, and I just don't want to push ourselves into a corner and then wish later that we had left it a little bit more open.
But I like about what I like about what you just said, Judy, is finding out what they're tuned into, what the people in the room are tuned into. I mean,
Right.
you have parents or whatever. What are you listening to? What are you hearing? Where are you hearing it? You know, how are you accessing information? Because I don't know how many of them pay attention to the data stuff. But I do think what John is saying, one thing I like is what are some, let's assume everybody is under stress, right? Every child, every adult, then maybe the parent education piece, could be a little more positive, like, how can you de-stress it within your family? Like, what are some ways to create less stress in your family right now?
Let me go back to Rick's comment about community conversation and the Let's Talk About Race series that we had. That both of them give you an excuse to raise that issue yourself. So if we had a community conversation about kids being under stress, anyone attending or hearing about it could go home and say, I just heard this, and they could talk to their kids. Is it true for you? Or you can even say, how about your friends? Don't talk about your own kids, talk about their friends. That after Let's Talk About Race, for at least the next year, I could talk to people of color easily. I was in this thing we learned about. Does that fit with your experience? And I wasn't saying I'm nosy, I'm poking your life. I'm saying I'm confirming something I heard and trying to get a better picture of it. And if you tell parents kids are widely stressed, ask your kids about it. That's the action item. The parents don't have to know that the kids are stressed. Ask them. And not just say, how was school today? Oh, fine, good. Did you do your homework? Yes, fine. It's got to be the next step of, a more detailed question.
Okay,
I
So
think
we
if we
got
look
the
back at stuff from last year, didn't APS do some, or what was that one that it was a survey that APS did? Somehow they had data on whether kids were feeling stressed. Am I remembering that right?
Well, they just did the SEL survey and the Your Voice Matters.
Yes.
And on the SEL, I forget which one it was, that's the one I'm quoting, where the kids said, yes, we are. We don't even do some, over the last couple of weeks, I've skipped some things because I'm too stressed to deal with it. They also said, and I guess it was the SEL one, I don't know how to argue with, I don't know how to disagree with someone without arguing with them.
Okay.
Half the kids said that.
Yeah. Well, I think using some of those examples also will help people who are there realize the amount of information, and that's only a bit of data and information that we'll eventually have, right?
Well, yeah, we're waiting for the youth risk behavior equivalent. I mean,
Right.
that's the one that really tells us what's going on. These two
Now the
surveys
Virginia Healthy
these are
Youth.
pretty soft surveys,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Right.
presentation is not helpful.
Uh-huh.
So we're talking about an action item being a event or something to get parents to talk with their kids. We're not talking about the partnership.
Now, let's go back to what Judy and Pam were saying. Let's
Uh-huh.
talk about, maybe let's have a community conversation. What should we talk about? I mean, I've got my opinion of one thing that would work. I think trusted adult, that would work. And there's 100 other things probably on the minds of people. We don't have to tell them what will be. But if we start out saying, what if we had a community conversation? What's or a couple of them, what would those issues be?
Remember, a
An
lot of
open
people won't
question.
even know what that is, what a community conversation is.
Well, it's pretty obvious. We can tell them that in a minute.
Yeah,
a
and they may
forum.
not be able to picture.
I mean, I don't
what
think
they're
they've
doing.
been very effective in the past, but they've been something that reaches out. And sometimes we get somebody from the press to come and report on it. And now you've spread it a little more widely.
Uh-huh.
Otherwise, you get, 20 people that put it on and 20 people from the community. And that's a lot of work for 20 people from the community, but it's better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I don't think you weren't effective. The effective is to raise awareness, to get people thinking. And I'm sure the people that went there didn't feel like they wasted their time, you know what I'm saying?
No, I think they benefited. And if everybody that went there talked to 2 or 3 other people, it's a wider audience.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You can create a wider audience if you do it right.
So don't you think, I mean, I think the hook that we have is we have this data that we're looking at, maybe other people aren't looking at it. I can't say I've looked at it that deeply, but we are the collectors of data. We present it, hey, this is what people are saying, what do you think? And then facilitate a conversation. And then offer ideas at the end. Well, if you want to take this somewhere, you can do this, or you can do this.
The last meeting, what we had was a walkthrough of what all the data is in your Voice Matters, how to get to it. And I made a couple of comments about be careful with interpretation, because I think the interpretation leaves a lot to be desired. Most of the things we just talked about are hidden in the averages that they came up with. So you've got to dig deeper, but they've had data last meeting and all the opportunity in the world to go chase it down. So we could push on that again some, make a quick summary of 10 things that that leap out. Trusted adult is one. I think this disparity is one. I can find a bunch of others. So we could make a short list of, are these things you'd worry about? Does this strike you? Do you want to have a conversation on this? Want to get the community to think about it?
I think that's a good idea, John, because to get the people who are sitting in that night, like next week at our at this event, for them to ask questions and understand, what's available, what information's available, what are the issues that the data that we do have is showing. That there you get some conversation. It's going to be just real important to get some conversations going, because there are a lot of people who've been, sitting and learning or participating or not. And there are people who are like with Parks and Rec who hear different conversations than I hear, or, people from the courts, Rick. So, people will come from at things with different perspectives, or maybe as a very new person to the partnership. So give them a chance to ask questions and do a little talking if they feel like it, I think would be really helpful.
I think we don't know if we're going to stir up much conversation. We can hope we do. That's the point of it. So
Right.
What we need are sessions that are open. If there's conversation, let them run and,
Right.
and get out of it as much as we can. If the conversation dies, that's what the facilitator would do, is bring up something else that we may not even get to in that meeting because we don't need it, but it would start the conversation up again. So we need a couple of conversation starters to go along with some of the open exploration. And I can certainly do that with the data. I can put one in that isn't a highlight. I can talk too long. You have to be careful. But I can do a highlight of some of the key issues if we need it, if there isn't a conversation generated by the people who come. But if they offer plenty of opportunities to talk, we don't need the data. We can put the data in later to validate what they're asking about.
It's also at the beginning, opening remarks, prepare people to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to show you this stuff. We want you to talk. You know what I'm saying? Make it clear from the beginning what the meeting is going to be like and what the expectations are. If they don't leave thinking, well, I don't know what that was about. You know what I'm saying?
I just got something from Wendy. She's Crawford now. She was Korea. I asked her and asked Kristen if they could tell us, kind of what they're seeing. I think that was something you guys had asked me to do. And so we have a nice, summary of things from Wendy. And she actually worked with Heather, I think you know Heather, right?
Heather Venner?
Oh, I don't know. Pam, who's Heather?
Heather Davis.
Heather
Heather Davis. She works for Kristen Devaney.
Okay, all right. And then the director, Daryl, and then Laura. She talked with all of them.
Laura's now in charge of the social workers. So they split
Right.
it into 3 supervisors.
Right. So we already have some information from them to, things that they're seeing out in the schools with kids, which will be really interesting to people, and I think will generate some thoughts and questions and ideas. And tonight, actually, in a few minutes, I'm going to be at the Student Services Advisory Committee meeting, and Daryl Sampson, is that his name? Yes, is the new director of student services.
Executive director. Yeah.
Executive director. So we'll have, he's going to be speaking to us in student services for the first time. So I'll jot things down, and hopefully we're going to record this. I don't know if we are or not. So that's another source of information, information that people would want to know, but also help with getting conversations going to
good.
talk about those things.
I happened to watch the work session on student climate and culture.
So did I. Yeah.
Did you watch that? Yeah.
Yes.
And the students said that what turned them around was a caring adult. These were a couple kids who had gotten into trouble and had been, and that's what had turned them around, somebody that cared. And they advocated for smaller class sizes, and but they did focus on the caring adult and lower class sizes, so that the teachers would really get to know each kid. And then Dr. Duran talked about asset-based thinking. So, I mean, wanting to focus on student strengths.
Mm-hmm.
So, those are just a few things that they said they wanted an adulting class, the students.
The students said that, yeah.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, I don't know. I remember
Life
doing a senior
skills,
assembly one time
thrive.
where we taught them how to, fix a car that had
Oh, yes.
a tire gone flat, or when we joked around about doing laundry, and we made them tie ties and stuff like that. I don't know,
Yeah.
what they're talking about, but
Yeah, they don't have a trusted adult to go to with those things.
yeah. So a student voice, could be something we want to search out too.
Yes, I agree. Totally agree, Pam.
Should we have some students come to this if they can, if they're
Yes.
willing?
I was
Yes.
just thinking, if the new TMB co-chairs could be involved. I haven't had a chance to get to know them yet, but I can reach out right now.
It sure would be interesting.
Lynn also.
Oh, he was
Lynn
gonna talk
committed
to Siobhan. That's
reaching
right.
out to
I'm sorry.
Siobhan. Yeah. So mindful of the time, we have a few good ideas for keeping the conversation going. I'm sorry, here, let me see if you can see me. My connection's kind of going in and out from my parking lot at the soccer field. But so there's a few different threads. I would love to use our last 15 minutes if we need it or so to kind of plan out an agenda and pull which threads we want to focus on. We've got a trusted adult piece. We have community conversations, which I think is a great conversation focus, maybe for breakouts, if we want to kind of change that up a bit. If you were going to have a community conversation, what would you want it to be about? I have John has some, data highlights that he could put in front of the group to think about, and also Judy's homework of hearing back from our school counselors about what they're seeing. So that sounds like to me, about 4 hours worth of potential conversation. So where would we like to focus?
I am writing this down. I'm thinking we should start with the reconnecting activity where somehow telling people, look, come in, talk to people, ask questions, get to know each other again. Then we can frame, we can start by talking about John, it's just my idea, John's data. You said John can do his highlights, and we can say these are things we're already working on. One of them being the trusted adult. One of them being what Judy's report is on, what counselors from the schools say. And present these as this is what the partnership is doing right now. Not like we're looking at the past and we got to think of what the heck we're going to do in the future. We're saying, no, this is what we're doing right now. And then we go into maybe the breakout groups and then report backs. We have questions for the breakout groups and see if there's common threads or whatever, and use that as a launching point for, as we move into transition of leadership and into the new year. What does that sound like as an agenda? That's just it. I'm writing this down as I talk. Uh-oh, I'm not hearing anything. Anybody there? Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Oh,
Thinking.
I'm going to be driving.
So, the breakout groups would focus on the community conversations, Rick? What,
well.
or
we have to think about
feedback
that,
on
yeah.
the data John presents, or?
I think community the breakout groups will be talking. I think the idea is to cull from the audience where the energy is, what they're really interested in working in,
Right.
giving stimulating questions that will produce, hey, you'll notice that somebody says something, everyone lights up and goes, oh yes. That sort of sets the tone for the next steps as we move forward.
I mean, my approach tends to be what worries me the most and where's opportunity to change. And that's what I try to go when I see a set of issues. I mean, there are a lot of things that worry me and I look at it and I say, nothing I can do. Not yet, maybe later, maybe somebody else. I'll talk about it if I get the chance, but I'm not going to put my energy into it. Where's an opportunity to do something about something I worry about? That's my energy. And so I think the breakout sessions are looking for something like that. And then after we've got that list of where's the energy and opportunity together, then we say, and would a community conversation for that be useful? Would, a newsletter, would
A campaign.
a Twitter account, a campaign, with what would make sense? Letters to the editor.
Right, Lynn did say he had money and could, the campaign could be is a possibility, right?
I think until we know it isn't, we assume somebody will do something about it. And we might have a partnership coordinator in the realistic future, according to Lynn. And so if that's true, then we've got somebody to actually do something about it other than, because we say we and the partnership, and then I have limited time as I look around, so do all of you. And resources. And so having somebody whose job it is to spread the campaign is very much more effective than having us meet every few weeks and say what we'd like to do. So that can make a big difference. But if we lay out some agenda beforehand for that person of where we are, then that person can add their interests and maybe something will click. So I think that's fine.
I think
So,
it's real important.
John, and sorry, what I'm hearing is a mini retreat like what we did in 2019. Do you see differences, John, where we all decided what issues we thought were important? Everyone ended up saying mental health is important as a priority, youth mental health, or do you see like more structure? Like I've lost the threads of trusted adults and where the data comes in. Are we sort of paring down some of the choices based on what we've seen in the data? or how is, it doesn't have to be different from 2019. But I'm a little worried that without more time and some more background, we're going to end up in one of those conversations where folks have bright ideas, but they're not aware that the county is already doing X, Y, and Z, or you know what I mean? If it's a big open conversation, where I always end up is this already happening in the county? What do we know? What do we don't know? I don't know. I feel like I've had that conversation a couple times. I wonder if this is
Well,
different.
look, we know there's an academic gap in schools, opportunity gap, I think now. Are the schools doing anything? Of course. Is it still an issue and is there opportunity to do more? Maybe so. So whether the schools or the county or the nonprofits are doing something, if the issue is still there, they're clearly not they're not solving the problem. They may be doing all they can, but the problem isn't being solved. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having ideas without knowing whether somebody's already doing it. Because, go ahead, Pam.
No,
And so
John,
you're
I was going
focused
to,
on issues that are coming out.
what I was going to say, John, is how do we add value to what
Yeah,
they're doing,
perfect.
right? That's what you're saying.
Perfect,
We
yes.
can always add value. And so the other thing is what can we do, again, picking up another thought you had of that we have control over, what's an action, a solution that we have control over, because otherwise it is stressful and it feels like you're just going in circles because you really don't have the ability to implement something like. So it's a lot more stress-free if it's something that the partnership could accomplish and it would add value to what's already going on.
To answer, yes, I agree completely. To answer Megan's question about should we focus on finding the issue to like mental health, I am reluctant to argue for that because we have a person coming in, if we do, who will be in charge of running things. And if that person has some other passion, and that passion is one of our top 3 or 4 priorities, I would not push that we've picked the right one, you do it regardless of your interests. So I think the new partnership coordinator almost has to choose from a menu rather than being told what the partnership's interests are. Knowing the partnership participants' interests gives some freedom. It is literally a menu of where to go if you're going to take something to the top. So I don't mind if we wind up with 3 or 4 things, which we've already talked about today, and the same ones are going to come up, but with a little more meat, and maybe we'll get some new ones, which would be really nice. I mean, hearing from the parents that are there, hearing from the counselors that Judy, you talked to, I mean, that's wonderful. We may get some very good ideas that's not in the data, because the data only gives you data on the questions that are asked. But if they didn't ask the right questions and somebody's got the right answer to a question that wasn't asked, that's what we want to know. So I don't think we have to pin it down to one. I would be uncomfortable pinning it down to one unless we, meaning we, are going to be the ones implementing it. And we're advisors. We have limited time and resources and contacts.
Is that really how the partnership works? The director is doing these things and we're advising? Isn't the director facilitating the community process to empower the community?
Sure.
I've always seen that. The director's sort of at the disposition of the community.
Well, we're recommending to the school and county. I mean, that's where our recommendations should eventually go. And if we have a short list of things that they should be dealing with, it'll be in their strategic plan already. I mean, we're not coming up with something really new. That we've had data for 20 years from the partnership alone, and county and school board members have had staff around that are very capable for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. So, a totally new idea, what a surprise. I mean, outdoor education is a relatively new idea in the last 2 years because of COVID. But there's all kinds of work on that. If we want to push on it, we can. But the point, anyhow, I'm not worried about getting too much new stuff. And I'm not worried about us coming up with something that's everybody's surprising. It won't be surprising, but it'll say where the energy of the community is and where people see an opportunity to make change, to do value added. I like that term. So that's the whole point from my point of view is we do value. If we find something that really is important and we can see that somebody can do value added, whether it's the county or the schools or the partnership itself, or there was created, if you remember, the Arlington Partnership for Children, Youth and Families Foundation, and they're the ones that put some money into some of the activities of the partnership. And we've taken over Second Chance, and we put in some considerable money to these reports that Judy thinks are so good. And we put some money into Let's Talk About Race and money into community conversations. So there's some money in a private foundation, public foundation that could be used for something if the county and the schools and the partnership think it's a good idea, but the bureaucracy at this point can't look forward to doing it. And I'm not offering that as money available because it has to go through the board and we have our own rules. But if there's value added somewhere, we look for ways to get that done. By advice, by money, by coercion. I mean, we're running a project for Reed right now, trying to do a better job of allocating the school budget. And we're in the middle. It's not our intellect. We get money from an outside foundation. We give it, in this case, to APS. They give it to a contractor. And they're trying to say, should the budget be divided up a little more carefully to need rather than by formula? I think it's a great idea. I hope it works. I hope there's an answer. Formulas settle a lot of things, but there are schools that have more special ed, more English language learners, more poverty, more, whatever, get down the line. So should they get more of whatever that takes to spur them? I'd say yes, but we have to see what's involved in putting a school budget together. They have constraints. So you can't say, oh, do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well,
am I hearing that maybe Ashley, we should take a rain check on the trusted adult portion of the meeting and have more conversation about setting priorities based on people's interests? Or how would that piece fit in if we are keeping it?
I think we should stick to the idea that we're looking at the past, the present is, the data, trusted adult, what was the other one?
Distress disparity for
yeah, disparities that, and we're
safety in schools.
And then the future is community conversations, further talking about these things to come up with more stuff. I do think it's important to say, hey, we're not just in the middle of nowhere. We haven't done anything all this time. The trusted adult is important because we've talked about that. We've talked about the community navigator as well, which in a sense is a trusted person that responds to a community rather than to an adolescent.
Right.
So I think these things,
so maybe
Ashley Blow come in to give a huge presentation. Maybe it would be better to do that another moment. We shouldn't not talk about these things. Right?
Say that again, Rick, and others. Do we think an 8-minute presentation would be a nice little kind of pause in the middle of the present section, or do we want to dig into trusted adult in November, for example?
Trusted adult responds to a lot of the things that the data has raised, correct? So I think digging in November would be a better idea to give it a full, because that responds to a lot of questions. So I don't think we should just give it we should introduce it, but not get into it to another point. Also, the data, we can't, until we get that last bit of data, we really can't do too much with that, because isn't there a sense that this youth risk survey is going to produce a lot of really juicy facts?
The Virginia survey, youth survey,
I don't
Mhm.
think it's
is
gonna have any
why
surprises.
it's
No.
the, you know, youth risk behavior survey,
Yeah,
and it'll refer to their behavior that's not what society would hope it is. That's the kind of questions that are asked. Then we have to, I think, properly interpret it again, looking at the assets of the kids and the community in order to make changes. I'm always glad to be reminded about an assets approach. Because
Megan,
it's true. They're all, I mean, people have assets even if they're in deep trouble. If you talk to them enough, they've got some strength somewhere, they've got some skills.
Mhm.
And they usually don't recognize it if they're in trouble. So,
Megan, it might be good to have the askable adult, just if they're willing to do a brief presentation, you know, a brief conversation with us, just as an example of, you know, something that was found to be a community need, and you know, how it's going, and who are they getting to. I don't. Anyway, it would be just sort of maybe something to get
teaser.
people thinking.
yeah, I think it's a good idea to have
Yeah,
it.
an example of something that county and community and everybody's been working on, and look
Right.
what they have.
It's actually a measure of the success of the data of the past. And
Right,
so
it's
it's a coming
relevant and-
attraction. Yeah.
It's relevant and it's an accomplishment.
So this is why we do this kind of exercise. This is why we get together and think, having done it in the past, there's now some activity going on in what's really critical, and it's still critical according to today's data. So it's still going to go on, and we'll hear more about it in November where we can do a bigger conversation. I think that's fine.
Okay, and then maybe for part 3, I like, Rick, how you're setting this up like past, present, future. It's almost like the Scrooge. What is it? The Scrooge, the ghost of
Yes,
partnership
it
past.
does. Right.
So, but then for future, I think structuring it as, you know, if we were going to set up a community conversation, what would we like it to be about? Not to shut off other avenues, but just to have like an exercise, you know, a way to build that conversation. And that could be a brainstorming as a big group, or
Mhm.
yeah, maybe we haven't done the breakouts yet.
Yeah. Well, breakouts could be focused on the community conversations. What worries me most? What are the opportunities to change? You know, also the equity question: who benefits, who's burden, who's missing? How do we know? What do what do we do?
I would
Mhm.
lean toward for the time issue, just do have Ashley as a possible thing to get involved with and a possible solution, but I do think the breakouts would take up a lot of, and then having to report back ends up being, I just think it might be better to keep it all together
One
this
conversation.
meeting and then do the breakouts like in November when you have more like meat on the bones of what's going to be the next steps, and hopefully a partnership coordinator. Who knows? Wishful thinking on my part, but
Oh, that's a great idea. Plus, if we're all virtual, it's easier to do a breakout. Easy for me to say, but then we don't have to worry about people in the room versus the. Okay, so maybe we would beef up the very first part of the agenda, Rick, some of the, what have we done in the past? You know, people can kind of be looking at what they see around the room or what we send them by email. And we can ask each person as they're introducing themselves to say, you know, what highlight or, you know, what past thing caught their eye, or what did they work